The ghost of Walt Disney. Walt Disney's connection to Disneyland is profound, as he personally oversaw its creation and was often seen walking through the park, making sure everything was perfect. After his death in 1966, many believe that his spirit never truly left the park. The most famous story involves Walt's apartment, located above the Main Street firehouse. Walt used to stay in this apartment during the early days of Disneyland, and he had a lamp in the window that would be left on when he was in the park. After his death, cast members continued to leave the light off as a tribute. However, one night, a cast member turned the light off before leaving the apartment, only to return and find it mysteriously turned back on. Some versions of the story claim that she heard a voice say, "I'm still here." From that moment on, the light has been left on permanently as a tribute to Walt and perhaps a sign that his spirit still watches over Disneyland. Other reports claim that Walt Disney's ghost has been seen walking around the park, especially at night. People have reported seeing a man who resembles Walt in the area around Main Street or near his apartment, only for the figure to disappear when approached. Mr. One Way is one of Disneyland's most famous ghosts, said to haunt the Space Mountain ride. The legend describes him as a man with red hair and a red face who appears in the line for Space Mountain or sometimes even in the seat next to a single rider. The creepy part is that Mr. One Way appears to be just like any other guest at first. He chats with people, especially those who are riding alone, and even gets into the ride vehicle with them. However, once the ride is over, Mr. One Way vanishes before the guests can see him leave. There are no reports of him exiting the ride, and sometimes people realize that no one was actually sitting next to them the entire time, despite having felt the presence of someone during the ride. Some versions of the story claim that Mr. One Way is the ghost of a guest who died on the ride many years ago, while others say he's simply a lost spirit who enjoys the excitement of Space Mountain. His appearance and mysterious disappearances have been reported by several guests over the years, making him one of Disneyland's most famous paranormal entities. George the Ghost. George is a ghost said to haunt the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Walt Disney World in Florida. The story goes that during the construction of the ride in the 1970s, a worker named George was killed in an accident. Depending on the version of the story, George either fell from one of the high platforms or was crushed by machinery. Ever since then, cast members and guests have reported strange occurrences on the ride. George's presence is most felt by the ride operators. It's said that if the cast members don't say "Good morning, George" at the start of the day and "Good night, George" when they close the ride will experience technical problems or unexpected shutdowns. Lights flicker, animatronics malfunction, and the ride might stop for no apparent reason if George is unhappy. Many guests have also reported feeling cold spots or hearing strange noises while on the ride, particularly near the area where George supposedly died. Though Disney has never officially acknowledged the story, George's legend continues to grow, with many cast members believing that his spirit still watches over the ride. The Monorail Ghost. The story of the Monorail Ghost dates back to the early days of Disneyland. In June 1966, a young man named Thomas Cleveland attempted to sneak into Disneyland by climbing over the park's fence and walking along the monorail track. Tragically, as he was trying to avoid security, he was struck and killed by an oncoming monorail train. Since then, people have reported seeing a shadowy figure running along the monorail track at night, particularly near where the accident happened. Some cast members who worked the night shift have claimed to see a young man running alongside the monorail before suddenly disappearing. Others report seeing a ghostly figure standing near the track, only to vanish when approached.